Welcome. My name is Kendra Morgan, and I'm the host of the Rise and Build podcast, where we hope to empower you to rise up and build a strong family, knowing you have to strengthen your hands to do the good work. Come with us as we rise and build. Hey, you guys, welcome to the Rise and Build podcast. Today, we are going to be talking about basic needs in building. We are going to be talking about feeding and eating. I am sitting across from Lauren Gebhard. She is a speech and language pathologist. And so, Lauren, I want you to introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about you, about the work that you're doing, about your family. Let us know about you.
Yes. So as Kendra said, my name is Lauren Gebhard. I am, first off, a wife to an amazing husband named Eric, a mom to a little boy, a not so little boy named Graham, who's 9, a daughter, Maggie, who is 7, and Will, who is 5. Like you said, I'm a speech language pathologist, and I'm on my 2nd year at Jenks Public Schools in that role. Before moving to Jenks, I was at a Christian developmental center for kids with special needs. So I did that for 10 years. 7 of them was, I was a classroom speech language pathologist, and then in leadership for 3 years.
I love it. You have made such a big difference in our community, and I'm so grateful for that.
Thank you.
I'm excited about our topic today. I think over the years, Lauren and I have become friends.
Yes.
And
so I'm so grateful for that.
You're sweet. We definitely both have had children that are picky eaters. And so when the topic came up about eating, I know there's some feeding therapists in town that are excellent, but my heart immediately went to you because I think you have a lot of knowledge in your expertise being a speech pathologist, but mainly being a mom. And so if you feel comfortable before we dive into some of these questions, do you mind sharing your story?
I would love to. It's humbling to be in a field for your career that involves something that then is difficult in your family, right?
Yes.
So, I think of maybe teachers whose kids have to, be tutored, and you think oh, I wish I could help them with that. I kind of felt that same way in my life, in my story, with really Graham's story, that has become my story. So I would love to share. I love to talk about Graham because it's been such a journey, but it's been, there's been a lot of hard parts, but there's been so many times where I felt the Lord right there with us, or like you said, I think you and I have bonded through it. It's really nice to, I've found so much, just help in talking to people about, Graham's journey, our journey. So I'd love to share. Graham is my 9-year-old. He's our oldest.
Okay.
So when he was born he was born in July of 2015, July 11th. And my pregnancy with him was normal. His birth was normal. You don't know what you don't know. And as a new parent, we didn't know a lot.
Right.
New parents. So Eric and I, but we were so excited. We wanted this baby. He was such a gift from the Lord, continues to be such a gift from the Lord. And so he comes along. We're, in the newborn phase. That's going as well as newborn phases go. We did notice, just to give you a little background, as he, was developing, that he was getting the flat spot on the back of his head, like many babies do, and, ended up going to see a physical therapist, and she didn't prescribe him with a helmet, but did diagnose him with torticollis, and so he had some tightness in his muscles in his neck. So we did some, exercises, and that seemed to get better. But all in all, really uneventful newborn stage. And so when I was really excited. I remember being so excited and kind of counting down to that like 6-month mark where you're going to give your baby their first taste of food. Like what fun. I mean, I don't know about you, but I love to eat. It's like, it's such, it's such a fun part of my day and my life. And so I just was so excited to share that with him. And it's such a social thing. Yeah. So I remember in January, he was turning 6 months and he was sitting up, and, you know, the pediatrician kind of gave us the go ahead. And so I think it was probably like on his six-month birthday. And so I remember where he was sitting, what he was eating, the color of the spoon I was using. You know, I remember because I was so excited to give him his first bite of baby oatmeal. This was kind of like right before baby-led weaning started. So I'm so excited. And I, you know, loaded up the spoon, and I, you know, kind of did like the little airplane thing and put it like near his mouth. And I mean, his face was like deer in the headlights. And I was like, okay, well, and he did not open his mouth for it, you know. So we did some more fun, like airplanes. And finally, the spoon made it into his mouth, and it just was not the happy experience that I thought it was going to be for him or for me. And right then and there, I just had this gut feeling. And, you know, as a mom, you get those gut feelings. I just had this gut feeling like, this is not going to probably be what I thought it was going to be. And that was the very beginning of a very long journey that we're still on every single day to help him learn to be a better eater, to, you know, this feeding journey that has just become part of our life and part of our story. So that was the beginning. So, you know, it's kind of a blur right after that. What happened, I think I was still nursing him at that point. And that was always a little bit of a struggle. I think the torticollis had some of an impact on that. But we made it 8 months, which I was really proud of. So I didn't have, you know, they say food before 1 is just for fun. So I wasn't super stressed, probably from the 6 month to the 1 year. Around that 1 year mark, when he still was not interested, still was not wanting anything other than milk, you know, from a bottle. We couldn't really transition to a sippy cup, milk in the sippy cup. That wasn't going to work. That's when I started to get stressed. And that's where I really didn't know where to turn. And it's a lot different when you're doing this for a job. Right. And when you're doing this for your own child. It's very different. Yeah. So it's humbling, like I said. And so he, at that time, attended the school that I worked at. And so he got a lot of support there, but we still weren't making a lot of progress. And so, you know, I'm asking our pediatrician, you know, what can we do? What can I do for him? And, you know, there was a lot of, and I love our pediatrician, but there was a lot of, you know, it's going to be fine. Let's just wait and see. Yes. Let's wait and see. And I think it's so well-meaning. I think they don't want to put any additional stress on parents who are already stressed and already worried. I get that. And so we did. We just kind of waited, and, you know, we kept doing the bottle because that was where he was getting his nutrition from, and would, you know, keep trying to expose him. It just weren't having any success. So around 2, we started I found an amazing therapist, feeding therapist, and we started going to food school. And that really was the first time I felt supported, heard, and really the first time that I felt hopeful that we have someone who's going to walk alongside us and who's going to help me help him. And that it's going to be a long road. She helped me see at the very beginning. I can tell that story at some point, but that it's going to be a long road, but he was going to be able to learn to eat and hopefully learn to enjoy it too. Right.
Yeah. Because they don't enjoy it. I mean, it's a battle.
It's hard for them. It's uncomfortable for them. And, you know, there's different reasons for that, whether it's, you know, poor oral motor skills or sensory. I think a lot of Graham's was sensory. The first time, you know, it's so fun to do the smash cake. And I remember, you know, okay, well, he didn't like oatmeal and he hasn't liked purees, but, you know, maybe he just doesn't like fruits and vegetables, but surely he's going to like icing, right? He's going to like cake. He's going to like sugar. Like, who doesn't like sugar? And
Right.
you know, I've learned now there are people who don't like sugar. I am not one of those, so I cannot relate.
Yeah. No.
So around his first birthday, we had the cake, we did the whole thing, and he, didn't want to touch it with his hands, which, you want all those cute pictures, and I have them of my other two, but not him. And so we let him see the cake, tried to get him to touch it, wanted nothing to do with it. So not knowing, I, took some icing with my finger and put it on his lip. And I wish I could show you guys the picture. Our photographer caught him projectile, vomiting. Yeah. And I mean, now we have the picture, and I'm glad we do, because now I can look and see how far we've come. Yes. But I just, again, thought, well, that is not how I thought that was going to go. Yeah. And so I think for him, it's a sensory, his sensory, needs never seemed to be so extreme until then. There was, a lot of babies don't like loud noises and don't like to be startled. There was some of that, not really with light, some with touch, like grass, sand, but that's pretty normal. But yeah, that's when I realized, okay, sensory wise, feeding, we have some sensory issues. So.
Well, I think you brought up an awesome couple points. One was, it's not what I expected. I heard you say that 2 or 3 times. And I think growing up and we play house and all that, we have these expectations of being a mom, and no one talks to you about having a baby or a child that can't eat or doesn't eat. Like, we know in our hearts, it's the most important thing. Yeah. Of course, air is probably the most important, but you're breathing, they have to have food, they have to have water. I mean, they have to, their needs.
And it's stressful if you can't meet that need.
Yes. Yes. And I'm right there with you. Our oldest daughter, Maggie, I got permission to share part of her story, but same thing. She, nursing wise, I had to pump a lot to keep making milk. And then the baby food thing, it was horrible. It was not a good experience. And oh my gosh, we could not get Maggie to eat. And I read the books. I tried the 1,000 different things to do, to be patient and just introduce the same food 21 times. I mean, I read all of that. And with Maggie, it's like she just wouldn't eat. And I remember at our church, they were just doing prayer requests, and Ryan and I actually went up and asked them to pray over our daughter, because she has to eat. Like, I knew how important the nutrition was for the development, but here I am with this development hat and I can't even get my kid to eat. And so I finally, one day, I was rocking her, and I just thought, take that hat off and put on the mommy hat, and know that you don't know how to be a mom, and it is okay to seek help and get help. And I'll never forget, Ryan and I ended up going to an OT, and she had us list out 12 things we wanted Maggie to eat. And it wasn't like, it was like, a hot dog would be nice. A taco.
I'm laughing because I probably had this exact same experience. So please tell me, make me feel better about my experience.
It wasn't like broccoli. Like, I could care less if she ate green beans or broccoli.
Who cares about nutrition at this point? No, Let's just put food in our mouth.
Or if we could just go to a restaurant and order a kid's hamburger or pasta.
There's social implications for it too.
Yes. Yeah. And so I remember Ryan was like, okay, let's be in reality. Like, we want her to eat a hot dog, pizza. Pizza would be dream world.
Chicken nuggets.
Chicken nuggets would be great.
French fries.
Just that was kind of our list. And we kind of giggled about it, because I really believe both of us believed it would never happen. Like, she wasn't good. I just was like, here you go to the therapist. Like, good luck with that. But the therapy worked. And it helps. So, which we're going to get into, because I want people to leave here knowing that there's a lot of hope in the future.
There is.
And I also want people to know that Maggie is in a master's program, and you would never know the child was
she's so beautiful.
You're sweet.
She is. So takes after her mom.
So there is a lot of positive that's going to come out of this conversation.
There is.
But
let me tell you really quickly my story when I first met our feeding therapist. Similar. I was, saying she had me write down all that he ate, which was, easy, because it was like wheat thins, hamburger off Hideaway Pizza. Truly, every Friday night, I would go to Hideaway, get a large hamburger pizza, pick the hamburger off.
Oh my gosh.
He would eat that. Finally, I started just calling Hideaway and I said, I will pay for the whole pizza. I will pay for the large pizza.
I just want the hamburger.
Just please, I'm so tired. My pincer grasp. I'm so tired.
Yeah.
And he's not doing it for himself yet. So they would, that's the hamburger lady calling, and they would. They were so sweet. So, but I went, and took me, not even 2 minutes to write down all the foods he ate. And I said, I just want him to eat like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Like me thinking this was going to be the same thing. It's going to be so easy.
Yeah. And
she looked at me and she said, okay, so kindly. She said, you are so far away from this.
Yeah.
You need, he's eating nacho cheese Doritos, right? Well, I don't think he was. I think he was eating Cool Ranch. She said, you need to be excited if he eats nacho cheese Doritos. Yeah. You need to be excited if he'll eat the chicken nugget that he had just started to eat.
Yeah.
Off a different plate or cut in a different way. And I was like, okay, wow. Yeah. I am hopeful, but I also am realistic in knowing that this is going to be a long journey.
It takes a lot of work.
I will say we are still not eating peanut butter, but we are eating bread, and we will eat pepperonis on a sandwich. So that's
improvement.
That's good.
Yeah.
Still no peanut butter, but
So when Maggie was little, one thing she would eat was peanut butter crackers. But she would only eat them in the car. So we would spend hours driving around, and she would eat these crackers, and I would go, okay, she's got a little bit of nutrition in her. One day I had to get an oil change. And so I pulled my car up at the place, and a friend picked me up. And so I pulled her car seat out of the car to move it into my friend's car. And I am not exact. 1,000 crackers fell out of her car seat. And
you're thinking she had been eating these.
And what she had been doing was stuffing them in her car seat, in the little, where your buckle comes out. Yeah. She was stuffing the crackers down in there. So they were in her seat. So when I pulled it out, and a mound of crackers was in the parking lot, I just started crying. Yeah. So my heart goes out to moms and dads, families that are listening to us about feeding, picky eating. So let's get into some of this that we can give a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of advice. So first of all, let's start talking about picky eating. I hear it all the time. We have families come to us and say, oh, my child is so picky. We have them list out the things that their children are eating. They're pretty typical.
Yes. Yeah.
Kids are not going to eat what we eat. So if the list is, some of these items, I don't necessarily consider that a picky eater. So could you talk a little bit about that? Like, what is a picky eater? What does that mean? Just talk a little bit about that.
So I will say, and it's all relative, right? Your perception is your reality. And I have to remember that when I'm talking to people, and, I'm in the trenches with a kiddo who truly is what I would call, and I'll talk about this, a problem feeder. And they're, saying, and again, your perception is your reality, but they're listing off these things like a green smoothie or, hummus. And I'm just like, I would be so grateful.
Yes.
But I also know that all families function differently, and mealtime and those expectations look different for every family. So I think that's really important to remember, that it's all relative. I also think it's really important to note that and I said this earlier, social implications for picky eating, and it's hard. You want your child to fit a mold, so they don't really, you want them to stand out in a positive way, not necessarily a negative way. And so feeding is hard. It's really hard. And I will, last thing before I go into picky eating versus problem feeding, many kids do go through a developmental picky eating phase from about 2 to 4. It's normal. We all hear that. My kid was a great eater. They would eat all these things, and then all of a sudden they won't. And it's normal. And it's worldwide. It's not just, it's something that happens in the United States, or it's worldwide. It's just developmentally appropriate. So I think that's important to know.
Very important.
But so there are two things, picky eating and problem feeding. And I get a lot of my information that I'm going to refer to from the SOS approach to feeding, or the sequential oral sensory approach. I have been trained in that approach. It's a 4-day training. I am not certified in that, but I have been trained. And I really believe in the approach. So that is, and we can talk more about that. But so picky eating, those eaters will generally eat at least 30 foods. Problem feeders, I'm just going to compare and contrast those.
This is good.
Problem feeders will usually eat less than 20, and they have a much more restricted range of those foods. Picky eaters will normally accept and eat a food after they take a break. So say a picky eater eats mac and cheese every day for a long time, and then they decide, no, I've had enough of that. Typically, a picky eater will eventually come back to that.
Okay.
A problem feeder is never going to come back to that. So, for example, Graham ate wheat thins basically from the time he could, like, had some teeth to chew, well, really gum, to, like, gum them till 36 months. And he would only eat that, like, they changed the box. And thank goodness I had kept the old box because that was an issue. But he still to this day will not eat a wheat thin. And so he stopped eating them at 36 months and hasn't come back to them. And he's 9. Problem feeders, a lot of time, it's called a food jag, and they will not come back.
Okay.
Picky eaters typically will. Picky eaters are able to tolerate new foods on their plate. They may touch it or taste it, even if they do so reluctantly. Normally, they're able to do that, to interact with that food. A problem feeder is going to cry, protest, fall apart, melt down, probably will not be able to even have that food on their plate, maybe not even on the table, maybe not even in that same room.
Wow.
I mean, that's how much the sensory system can impact these kids. They may not be able to even tolerate it being in their eyesight. Picky eater will frequently eat different foods at a meal than the rest of the family, but a lot of times can eat with the family, at the same table. A problem feeder will almost never, eat the same food as their family, and often will have to eat at a different time, at a different place. They just, again, can't tolerate being around
all the food.
And another thing is picky eaters will add new foods to what they're eating, their repertoire. And I should have probably talked about this a little before. There's an eating hierarchy. So we think when we sit down, we think, okay, we're going to think about what we want to eat. We're going to sit down and we're going to eat it. It's really not that easy. There's actually like 32 to 35 steps on like the eating hierarchy, basically going from tolerating food to it being in our stomachs, which we don't think about because for us, it's just instinctive. So picky eaters, it usually takes them like 20 to 25 steps on that hierarchy. And for the problem feeders, it's going to be more like 25 to 35 steps. It's just more difficult for them to coordinate seeing it, smelling it, touching it, letting it come to their, lips, tongue, chew, and swallow. And then lastly, the SOS approach would say picky eaters are reported to the pediatrician at a well child check, usually like less than 2 years of them saying, my child's picky. They're picky, like kind of, every time they go see their doctor. Problem feeders, it's going to be probably more than that 2-year period that they're still talking to their doctor. Like, my child still hasn't really grown out of this. It still hasn't gotten better. So that's the time frame that they put on things. Okay. So there is a difference. Neither of them are easy.
I know.
But both can benefit from support.
Yeah.
We all want our kids to be successful. And so I wouldn't say like, if your kid is just a picky eater and sounds like someone I described in that wheelhouse, that you would be overreacting if you were getting support. I wouldn't say that, but I would definitely say if you hear this and you think, oh, my child really might be a problem feeder, and then you should seek support if you're ready for that. Okay.
And talk to me, if I'm listening to this, what is support?
So support for me, I definitely think starting with your pediatrician is great. I think sometimes we have to advocate with our pediatrician and tell them really what is important to us and what our goal is. Sometimes I think pediatricians think we just need to, have someone to talk to. And sometimes that is the goal. But if your goal to get support is, being referred to a feeding therapist or something like that, I think you need to communicate that to your pediatrician. I also think, the internet can be a really hard thing, but it can be a beautiful thing. And there are so many resources out there. And so I've mentioned the SOS approach. Dr. Kay Toomey is the one who started or invented the SOS approach, and she is still traveling around the world teaching. And she actually has a great website, and it has a 2-hour free caregiver webinar that I've had to watch it and listen to it quite a few times.
I love that.
It's kind of high level, some of it, but it's really, really good. And
do you know what that website is?
Yes, and I can give that to you. Or I would just type in the SOS approach to feeding.
Okay,
but I don't know if you have show notes to this podcast.
Yeah, we can do that.
But I would love to link that.
Okay.
And again, today even, I was searching some things just to make sure I had my facts straight, and just typed in SOS approach to feeding, and there's so much out there.
Awesome.
But it can be overwhelming. So, another way, just find someone who can relate, whether it's a friend or, a mom who's, been through this.
Right.
I was so grateful that you and I just struck up a conversation about this one time, but it's so nice to not feel alone. And, and you're not.
Because it is very lonely.
It is.
It feels like you're the only one struggling with this. Talk to us about any advice on what to do with our family. So I just know people don't understand it, and they just think, just give it to him. Just stick it in his mouth. He'll get it. He just needs to be eating it. And so sometimes grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles, it can be hard. Christmas, Thanksgiving. Do you mind sharing a little bit about that?
We are still working through that with our family. And I would love to talk through that. And if you have wisdom to share, I would love to hear that too. So the SOS approach to feeding also has 10 top myths. And one of the myths is, if a child is hungry enough, he or she will eat.
Yes.
They will not starve themselves.
Yeah.
So that is a myth. It's false. While that's true for about, this says 94 to 96% of the pediatric population, the other 4 to 6% that have feeding problems, true feeding problems, they will choose not to eat if it's too hard, too scary, too uncomfortable. They will choose not to. So we can't use that old adage of, if they're hungry, they'll eat. Because these kids that we're talking about right now, they won't. Okay. They'll put their crackers into their car seat. They'll throw the bread on the floor under their high chair, and you'll discover that when you stand up from the dinner table. They won't. So I just think continuing to be your child's advocate, even with your family. I think about Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners, and you don't want to stand out in a negative way, but these kids can't explain a lot of times why eating is hard, why eating is scary, why eating is uncomfortable. And so we have to kind of stand in the gap for them and just be on their side. And with that, I think just modeling the fact that we're not going to force feed these kids, it's going to make it so much worse. And I learned that in feeding therapy. I used to think, if I just, make him eat this cookie, never thought I'd be forcing my kid to eat a cookie, but if I just make him eat this, he'll realize he likes it, but it just sets you back. And so I think, I don't know the best way to convince people. There's research that shows it. I don't know that they're going to want to sit down and read it, listen to it, but I think modeling it and just hoping and praying and just asking them to support the way we're doing it. And sometimes that means, if you need your aunt, uncle, mom, dad to watch your child, and if meal time's involved, because it's going to be, because our kids eat throughout the day, sometimes we've been told, well, we're not comfortable feeding them, or we can't watch them because we don't know how, so that can also be isolating, and that can also be difficult. But I think as much as you can, just to model. I think that's the best way.
Well, I think you just have to be confident in your family is your family.
That's right.
And you are going to set the expectations and the boundaries for your family. And if grandma and grandpa don't agree with what you're doing, it doesn't matter because it's your family.
Right.
And you're the one setting the boundaries. And you have to...
Easier said than done.
Way easier said than done. But you have to be the voice for your child because they don't know how to communicate. And they feel uncomfortable at times too. And so it is okay to look different or feel different and stand up for your child in a situation like that because it is hard.
And it's probably the hardest on them, you know. It's hard on us, but they're the one who, they have this pressure and their bellies are hungry.
I know.
Probably, so.
Yeah.
Does that answer that question?
I think it does. Okay. I mean, I don't think it's just not a black and white question. I think it's okay if you know you really have a child that's struggling with feeding. Maybe you don't sit at the dinner table. Maybe you come in late to the Thanksgiving dinner.
I think that's really wise.
Just to take the pressure off of you and take the pressure off of them. Yeah. Knowing it's not going to be forever.
Yeah. And off the people who are, you know, providing the meal. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've gone to someone's house and you know, you kind of want to throw manners out the window because my child is nervous because it's what he sees on the table. And while you want him to say like, no, thank you, that's not a rational thought in their fight or flight brain that they're having when they're seeing, you know, they see something sitting on the table.
Yeah. I remember one time we picked Maggie up from church and they asked if we could stay after. And we were like, sure. And they were telling us that Maggie threw peas across the room. And I mean, if anyone knows my daughter, she's an angel, sweetheart. And Ryan just started laughing and he was like, welcome to our world. Yeah. Like, yes.
Do you want to come over for dinner?
She's really good at this. But at the time, I was a little bit devastated because I was like, the church things were like horrible parents. But it just came down to, I had to get to where my job was to make Maggie be the best Maggie that she can be. And Maggie doesn't have to look like every other child to be the best Maggie. Yeah. And so somewhere in that, we, as a mom that's listening to this or a dad, we just have to find it in us that this is who the Lord made your child to be. And we're just going to focus on their strengths and what they're good at and not all of the struggles. Okay, you were going to say something.
I was just going to say this was no surprise to the Lord. You know, he knew that we were going to have this child and we were going to walk through this. Yeah. He probably thought, I'm going to give this one to a speech pathologist. And that has not helped Graham at all. Yeah. No, maybe a little bit. No,
it has helped.
Maybe a little bit.
It has helped. And I felt like you know the support and you knew the resources to get him.
I did. I froze for a minute, but we ended up finding them.
So if I'm listening to this and I'm like, do I have a picky eater or do I have like a child that really has a feeding issue, feeding problem? I think I just have a picky eater. What are 3 things you would give advice-wise to a family with a picky eater?
So 3 is going to be hard. I'll do my best.
Okay, well, we can do 2.
Okay, I was going to say I like.
Oh, you like 4 or 5? Oh, go for it.
No, I think overall, and this isn't going to count. Just remember to love your child through it. You know, it. Mm-hmm. I think it's easy to love your kids, but it's also really hard when you're in the thick of, again, trying to feed your kiddo. A lot of families are busy. A lot of families are on the go. This is sometimes like a box you need to check. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously we love family meal times and sitting down at the table, and that's a whole other conversation. But, you know, our goal is to get calories and nutrition in these kids. And so love your kiddos through it all, whether you're sitting down, standing up. So number 1, I just think you have to feed your kid at least 3 times a day. For those of us who are moms and dads, more like 5 or 6. These kids like to eat, and really if they need to eat more often because they're not eating the size of meals that adults eat, and that's why we eat 3 times a day. So just remember while you're loving your kid through this that you have to be calm, cool, and collected yourself and that your kids are going to feed off how you're feeling. So if you can be calm at mealtime, they're going to probably be more calm. So I think that's great. Mealtimes are a teaching opportunity. And this is what the SOS approach says. Mealtimes are a teaching opportunity, and we as parents are the teachers. So that's a lot of pressure. And to be able to teach to the best of our ability, I think we need to be as calm as we can be. So if that means going to another room and taking a couple deep breaths before you're walking in, because Even like we said, picky eating is hard. So if that's doing that, or if it's taking a quick walk around the block, if you can do that, or whatever it is, or just to calm yourself. Number 2, expose.
Okay.
I don't think I was looking back, I was not as good at this as I would have liked to be. I let Graham see a lot of things, but I didn't really let him play with it.
Yes, I was the same way.
I really didn't encourage him to get messy.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have.
Yeah.
I really think parents, it's a good thing.
Yeah,
it really is a good thing. And you hear, don't play with your food. Let them play, let them explore, let them feel it, let them touch it, let them taste it if it accidentally happens. I think it's really good for the sensory system. Number 3, do not pressure or force a kiddo to eat something. Watch their body language, listen and watch their breathing. I remember Graham, when he was at food school, feeding therapy one day, they were doing Teddy Grahams, and those are cute and yummy, and they don't seem threatening. But I had not picked up on, and thankfully his feeding therapist was amazing, and she did. She said he had backed up from the table a little bit, just slightly. Mm-hmm. His body language was real stiff, and his breathing was really shallow. And she said, watch him. I would have never picked up on those things. I would have
that's
been,
great advice.
And so I just think to know not to force and to be really watching your child's reactions is really important. Speak positively about food and about what you should do. We want meal times to be a positive experience always. It's not always you're not going to always walk away and feel like it was positive, but as much as you can. So if your child's throwing peas, you would say, our peas stay on our plate, rather than don't throw the peas. Or if you're, a lot of times our kids love to drop their cup on the ground. Graham was dropping his cup because he didn't want the milk in his cup. He wanted it in his bottle, so he'd drop his cup. And so instead of, Graham, don't drop your cup again, I would say, our cup stays on the table. Or without even doing that, I would just put the cup on the table and not, engage. But as positive as you can be, we want our kids to want to come to the table. Yeah. And I just think this is more for a problem feeder, but the best advice we got for Graham, and what we still try to do, is we try to alternate days. So we try to have an A day and a B day. So A day, he can have, these foods, and B day, he has these foods. So we don't want him to have, he loves chicken meatballs. I make 24 chicken meatballs every week, and he loves those, but I only let him have them on the A days, because if he had them on the A day and the B day and then the A day again, he's going to get sick of those, and then we're going to lose that food, and we're going to be out of food. So that is more for a problem feeder, but it wouldn't hurt someone who's picky to just kind of have, an idea of what food you're giving your kid each day, so that they don't end up losing a food, because that's kind of devastating. Yeah. Especially when it's something that is a huge part of their nutritional value, like, Graham's chicken meatballs.
Awesome. Lauren, go ahead and share one important message to our listeners about feeding. If you could just pick a top one, whether it's coming from a therapist or coming from a mom's perspective, what is one thing you would like to share?
So this is probably coming more from a therapist perspective. This I learned when I went to the SOS approach to feeding training in Denver. I flew up there when my youngest son, Will, was only 6 months old, because I was desperate to learn more, not only to help my son, but to help all the kiddos at the school I worked at, because I realized then that as a mom, how important this was. And I wanted to be the best therapist I could be.
I love that.
And the best mom I could be. So this is something I learned there, and I'll just read it. It says, eating is the most complex physical task that human beings engage in. It is the only human task which requires every one of your organ systems and requires that all of those systems work correctly. In addition, every muscle in the body is involved. For example, for one swallow, it takes 26 muscles and 6 cranial nerves to coordinate one swallow. Plus, eating is the only task children do that requires simultaneous coordination of all 8 of our sensory systems. And if you didn't know, yes, there are 8 sensory systems, and that eating requires us to do all of them at the same time.
Yeah.
So if you're parenting a child like I am, who eating is not easy for anyone, but if it's extra not easy for them, if it's extra hard, you are not alone.
Yeah.
And you don't need to walk through this alone. There are resources like we talked about and people who can help you. There's food school, feeding therapy. That's an option. And I just want you to know that things will get better. And I don't want you to be discouraged as a mom to mom, if it's a long process, because it's not going to change overnight. Yeah. You're going to have a lot of little successes that end up that you look back on and you look back at it like a big success.
Yeah.
And that's where we are today with Graham, and you're going to see progress.
Yeah.
But I want you to remember that eating is not easy. And so just give yourself grace, give your child grace. And I think that helps me as a mom.
No, it's good. It's good. It's wise advice. I also think it's important to know that you're going to have some good days, you're going to have some bad days. So you might take a baby step one day and praise that. And the next day you might take 2 backwards.
I think I'm so glad you said that.
And it's okay to take those step backwards, because tomorrow you might take 3 forward. Yeah. And so it's this every day going back and forth that is hard. But I think it's so important to know that a baby step is still moving forward.
I have so many Facebook and Instagram posts that, boast about Graham eating something and we've never touched it again. But I am still so proud of those moments because awesome. We could celebrate that, and he felt good about it. I felt good about it. We connected over that. And I think whether we didn't learn to eat that food necessarily again, but we learned how to work together to try again with a new food. So I think celebrate it. And even if it doesn't stick, continue to know that was meaningful in the journey.
Yeah, I love that. So Building All Children is always about the Bible. We're always about turning families back to the truth. Do you have a scripture that you would like to share with us?
I do. It might sound cliche, but I would really love to just share 2 Corinthians 12:9. But he said to me, "My grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will burst all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me." And I just think as parents, I feel weak more than I feel strong. But I come back to that scripture, and I know that through my weakness, and only through my weakness, is he going to make me strong and a stronger wife, a stronger mom, a better therapist. And so I've learned to really not rely on my own strength, power, wisdom, because it only goes so far. Yeah. And I just have learned that it's okay. And my days are a lot better if I'll ask him to come alongside and strengthen that weakness. And it, again, going back to grace, it just helps me give myself grace when I don't know what to do, or I want to just say, this is really hard, because it is.
It is hard.
Parenting is not easy, but it is a privilege and something I'm so grateful to get to do every single day. And Graham has taught me so much through this, more than just about learning how to eat new foods. He's taught me patience and kindness and perseverance. Yeah. And I think, that's probably why the Lord gave him to me.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for Such a sweet kiddo.
He's the best. We he's a big Building All Children fan. We all are. We would not be the family that we are without Building All Children. So
sweet.
Thank you for everything that you guys do for our family and for every family that you serve.
Wow, you're awesome. If you are listening to this and you are realizing that you might need some help, we want to support you. So you can always go to buildingallchildren.org. Our phone number is right there, and we will help you connect to the resources that you need. Lauren, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks, Kendra.
Let us close with a word of prayer. Dear Lord Jesus, thank you for these children in our lives. Thank you for all the resources you have placed in our life to help us rise up and build. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you for listening to the Rise and Build podcast, brought to you by Building All Children, a child development program in Tulsa, Oklahoma. To learn more about Building All Children or the Rise and Build podcast, please visit buildingallchildren.org. This podcast is crowdfunded. We appreciate our sponsors and the donations given by our listeners. Come with us as we rise and build.